Happy Canada Day? Also, hello and welcome and good afternoon. This is Going Well, I think, with David Cooper, and I am David Cooper. It's This Is Going Well, I think. That show where no one's listening, no one cares. The show where every episode's the last episode. I am going to take a bit of an extended vacation the next few days. My parents are having their 50th wedding anniversary. That is 50 years too many for most people, but just enough for them. So I'll be in Canada on vacation, July 3rd through 9th. I'll be back on Wednesday, but I'll be here tomorrow. So I don't know why I'm telling you this now. I guess I'm just emotionally preparing you. But on to today, a great show. In just about 10 minutes time, I will talk to a highly decorated dermatologist. We are going to talk about a fancy new product, full body deodorant. Do you stank? If you stank all over and people complain, this product might be for you. Or maybe it doesn't work. We'll get to the bottom of that soon. Then it's my friend, Toronto-based comedian Natalie Norman, who's such a laugh. She's going to crack you up. And the topic we hope to cover, which I hope will help you, how to tell your friends, family, loved ones, anyone you need something from, what you need, instead of relying on them being some sort of mind reader and things going awry. This applies to dating, professional life. Honestly, her and I are nutcases, but if there's one lesson you won't want to miss, it's this from us. That's right, sound advice from her and I, lunatics. Oh, and foreign correspondent Tony Five's going to be here, and we're going to talk about the upcoming British election, what you need to know, and a lot of stuff you don't. So that is the show. I am looking forward to it. I hope you are too. And before we jump in, this. And in the latest from the Sunshine State, here's a story that could really only come from Florida, where a 72-year-old man has decided he's not a fan of drones, especially the ones making deliveries for Walmart. This man, who I imagine is a modern-day hero, enacting the 2024 version of Get Off My Lawn robots, he was out by his pool, likely muttering to himself about kids these days and their fancy technology, when a Walmart drone set out to make deliveries flies over his house. Now, most of us might just wave at the drone, or at least stand and hope it's dropping off a pizza, some goodies, and not a bomb. But this man, he grabbed his trusty 9mm handgun and gave that drone a piece of his mind. Or more likely, a piece of hot lead. Clearly a sharpshooter, he took it down with just one shot. Now that is some serious aim. But the man's little misadventure cost Walmart a $2,500 drone. And while delivering, it's safe to say that they did not get the 5-star rating they might have been hoping for. When the police showed up, our hero didn't even try to hide it. Imagine the chutzpah. No, he proudly told the cops and his neighbor that he was going to go to jail for shooting a drone. That is oversharing, but I admire his transparency. And to top it off, this all runs even deeper. It isn't the man's first run-in with drones. He's convinced they've been spying on him. Oh no. I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure the only thing those drones were surveying was the shortest route to drop off someone's bulk toilet paper order. So, our hero, he gets slapped with a bunch of charges. Shooting a deadly missile is one of them, which probably sounds way cooler than it is. He also gets charged with criminal mischief, discharging a firearm in public. Let's be honest, it was a bingo card of bad decisions. He did post a $13,500 bond though, so he's out awaiting trial, which does make me wonder, is there a GoFundMe for this kind of thing? Help Florida man fight drone invasion, I imagine the title on the page to be. Look, I donate just to get the updates. So word of caution, if you see a drone, maybe don't shoot it. Unless you want to end up in the evening news and in my attempt at making a few jokes. So stay safe and may your 5,000 dishwasher pods get delivered to your front door safely. Have you heard about the company Bland AI? A company that's name is so bland, it's got the word bland in it. Well, this new company is making waves. They've created AI voice bots that are so human-like, you'd think they were human, just listening to them. The company's latest ad, a billboard in San Francisco reading, "Still hiring humans?" ? This company is serious about AI voices, and you can almost hear the existential crisis in HR departments across the land. Now, this company makes bots that are so good at mimicking humans, they might win an Oscar for best, I don't know, voice actor? Is that even an Oscar? When Wired magazine tested them, the bots not only lied about being human, but did it with the confidence of a politician during campaign season. In one specific example, a bot from this company that was deployed by a pediatric dermatology office called a 14-year-old and started asking for thigh pictures. Creepy, and in doing so, insisted that it was a real person, not a bot. Now, I must say, no actual kids were involved, no actual underage photos were sent, but still, this is a lot like a plot from a really uncomfortable Black Mirror episode. Bland AI, which is a startup, they've been around since 2023, and they're currently in, quote, stealth mode, which I guess means the company's pretending not to exist. Sort of like the way my ex treats me. The ethical dilemma here, though, the company has a product. It sells AI to companies that sound human and lie about not being human. Experts are saying this is a terrible idea. I imagine it's like trusting a raccoon to guard your garbage. Now, Bland AI's head of growth says the bots are meant for controlled environments, not for emotional connections. Because nothing says controlled like a bot convincing a teenager to send lewd personal photographs, and the company says they audit their system to avoid unethical behavior. Because self-policing works out great, always, 100% of the time. Case closed. The company's terms of service state that users cannot impersonate other people while using their AI voices. But that does not stop the bots themselves from playing pretend. When Wired magazine programmed one to pose as a human sales rep, it denied being an AI. Now, this whole debacle highlights the larger issue of AI transparency. Just last year, OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, rolled out a flirty bot voice that resembled Scarlett Johansson. What is it with AI and Scarlett Johansson? That's the question here. And even Meta, the company behind Facebook, their chatbots refuse to admit that they are bots, which in my opinion is pulling a Pinocchio, but without the charming wooden nose. Experts warn that this functionality and behavior of chatbots and voices can lead to emotional manipulation of people, which is to say, you can get catfished by a robot these days. The horror. You think you're talking to a supportive human, but it's just a bot with the empathy of a parking meter. So if we don't draw a clear line between humans and AI soon, we might end up in a dystopian future. Think Terminators, but more boring and with better phone manners. But my advice here, double check, maybe triple check who or what you're talking to on the other end of the line. Stay skeptical and don't send a bot lewd photos of your thighs. Here's one that's out of this world, literally. Well, literally if you believe UFOs come from out of this world. But here's the story. 12 hardworking employees at Red Rocks, the famous amphitheater in Colorado, were wrapping up, tearing down after a concert a few weeks ago in June, when things got a little bit extra terrestrial. They were cleaning up after the concert. It's 1 a.m., and suddenly one of them says, "Hey, what's that over there? It looks like a spaceship." And wouldn't you know it, there it was, a dark metallic disc just hanging out in the sky. Now, I've seen some weird stuff go down at a concert, but it's mostly hippies and drug-related, and this one definitely takes the cake. These guys described the UFO as a massive 3-story building with lights and windows. It hovered silently above the treetops, as if it was scouting for a new corporate headquarters. Maybe they were looking for some interns. Which reminds me, we'll be hearing from our intern Zach later in the show. This could quite possibly be a stellar job for him. But back to the story. One of them mentioned that the craft was as silent as a librarian on tranquilizers. No noise, just big old UFO chilling way above Red Rocks. It hovered for about 30 seconds before it decided to say peace and disappear. And the man who made the report says it didn't zoom off like in the movies. No, it just kind of tipped and slowly disappeared into thin air. Now that's a ghosting. Now, I've had fungus on my back that stuck around longer than this UFO, but at least I knew what that was. Tinea. And yes, Lamisil fought it off. But back to this, these poor guys were left scratching their heads. They kept asking each other, "Are you seeing this too?" And everyone in the group was like, "Yep, I'm not hallucinating alone here either." So, it's the classic case of a UFO report. But let's be clear, the unidentified, the U in UFO, means just that, unidentified. So before you grab your tinfoil hats and start worrying about probing in your nether regions, remember this, it's just a bunch of lights maybe some metal, maybe some strange phenomenon. Who knows what it is, but it's just unidentified. Even if these men saw what they saw, the best we can say is no one can explain it. That says nothing about what it is. It could just be a Walmart drone gone rogue. Who knows? But these guys who made the report, they were very convinced that it was not a plane, a satellite, or a drone. So if you're heading to Red Rocks, keep your eyes peeled, keep your cheeks together, and look up, because you might just get a show that's out of this world. But honestly, if you see something strange, it might just be an alien late for a date or something. All right, in a moment's time, we will talk to a dermatologist based out of New York, right here, to talk about full body deodorant and maybe some other dermatological questions. So don't miss this wild new product, full body deodorant. We'll tell you about it in a sec. Do you stink? Do you stank? Has anyone complained about you smelling not just from your underarms, but from your entire body? Well, there's a little something called whole body deodorant. Is it safe? Should you use it? Does it even work? Questions we'll have answered with Dr. Nkem Ugonabo. She is a board-certified and fellowship-trained dermatologist at Union Derm, an assistant professor at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, Division of Dermatology. Those are a lot of credentials, but I looked you up, Nkem, and you're a very impressive doctor.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is all mine. I think this story lends itself to like silliness because the first thing we think of when we think whole body deodorant is people stink.
Yeah.
But I've never heard of this before. Do you want to just explain what it is and how it differs from, I don't know, my speed stick?
Yeah. So it's interesting because deodorant is kind of used as a catch-all term. But when it comes to just simply under the arms, there's actually a difference between deodorant and antiperspirant that people don't necessarily think about. The main difference in its simplest form is that antiperspirants actually help stop sweat or reduce sweat, while deodorants, for the most part, are helping to mask body odor and keep you fresh during the day. And so we grew up historically thinking just under the arms because that is a big source of body odor. But for a lot of people, there are other parts of the body that can contribute to that. So a lot of times there's areas of friction, like in between the thighs or in the groin area. For some women, it might be underneath the breasts, etc. So the thought with whole body deodorant is deodorant that you can apply to other parts of your body that might also be affected by body odor.
Got it. And so how effective are these alternate treatments that aren't underarm deodorant, and how exactly do they work?
So they essentially work by helping to keep the areas fresh. So a lot of them will have ingredients in it that help with the friction too. So going back to things like the groin area, areas that are constantly rubbing and chafing, sometimes those whole body deodorants, which will come in either like a balm or a stick form, they can be really effective in those areas and to help keep it fresh by preventing that excess sweat there and excess body odor there. I do think that there is a thought of maybe applying it to the full body. And as a dermatologist, I'm not sure that's necessary because areas, whether it's like your arms or just like areas of your stomach, they're probably not contributing to body odor as much as other sensitive areas. And so I don't think we necessarily need it for the entire whole body, but I do think it can be effective for specific areas of the body that you're noticing body odor come from.
Do you think we as a culture are too worried about this stuff? Like, don't you think a little bit of odor, a little bit of musk? I know that pheromones, this is going to sound a little gross, but I don't mind the way my girlfriend smells when she hasn't showered in a day or so. Are we worrying too much about this stuff and reaching to products that we really don't need?
Yeah, that's something I've talked to with my patients quite often. I do think that there is an element of maybe being a little overly sensitive about these things and being overly cautious. There are some cultures where a little body odor is okay or a little sweat is okay. And, perhaps we swung a little bit in the other side of the pendulum. However, there are people who are significantly affected by this. They're very socially self-conscious. They are having an effect on their quality of life, and they don't feel like they can have day-to-day interactions because of this body odor. And so I think that there is a segment of the population that can truly benefit from it, but it's not necessarily needed for everybody.
Got it. I dated someone once who had, I think, this disorder where she smelled, it was kind of like a fishy odor, and it was a very strong musk, and it was like in her car, and when I would touch her, the kind of oils would rub off on my skin. I'm not trying to make fun. She was a lovely person.
Yeah.
Is deodorant something that could work? I've heard of this disorder. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, there's a couple of them. I know, especially if it's in the genital groin area, that fishy odor can sometimes be something called bacterial vaginosis. And then there are other different kind of hydrosis that can smell a very particular scent. But in general, what you're alluding to, in my opinion, is a medical issue.
Yes.
And I do want to get that point across to people. If you're having like a very distinct smell, the deodorant to mask that smell is probably not the way to go about it. You want to get a diagnosis first, just to make sure that there isn't something deeper going on that might actually need maybe some oral medication or maybe like a more longer treatment plan with a physician. So I would say if it's something very specific and it's been going on for a while, definitely talk to your doctor about it before just kind of masking it with a whole deodorant bomb.
Yeah, I think this was something called triethylaminuria. It's like fishy odor scent. You know what I'm talking about? It wasn't in the groin. It was like a full body kind of musk. I guess deodorant is not the way to fix that one.
No, that one, in my opinion, requires a doctor's visit and some medical attention for that.
All right, let's get back to deodorants, antiperspirants. Are there ingredients in them that aren't safe or that are regarded as less safe? Is there something I should be looking for when I look at the labels?
So I would say for the deodorants in particular, sometimes the way that they will help mask smell is by putting fragrances in it. And it's not that those are not safe. However, some people who have very sensitive skin can be sensitive to those fragrances or to any ingredients in general. So what I would usually recommend is starting with a test spot prior to applying it to the full area. So if you are getting, like, let's say a stick or something like that, I would just put it on a tiny little square on your skin somewhere where if it were to, react, it wouldn't be a huge deal prior to applying it to a larger part of the body. So definitely have to make sure it's sensitive skin friendly before using.
Got it. And I don't know if this is misinformation or whatever. I've just heard certain ingredients like aluminum or something like this aren't good in deodorants. Are they not putting that in there anymore? Is that not something I have to worry about?
So that's going to be going back to the deodorant versus antiperspirant distinction. The antiperspirants are typically the ones that will have aluminum salts in them. And the reason why they include aluminum is because aluminum is what helps create like a little plug almost in the sweat ducts to help reduce sweating. So most deodorants will not have aluminum. That's going to be an antiperspirant. But I do want to say, at least from my perspective as a dermatologist, aluminums actually are safe. There's a lot of information out there about it being, contributing to with cancer, maybe Alzheimer's, etc. But they don't have any, as far as I know, there's no, controlled trials or any kind of like real significant research that has proven that correlation. So for the most part, we still recommend them in the dermatology field.
Good. So what I'm hearing is no kind of like peer-reviewed, conclusive link that these ingredients aren't bad. Good, because I double up. I feel like you got to double up.
I think, especially if you're a heavy sweater, in my opinion, under the arms, you kind of do need an aluminum in there to actually help reduce that sweat.
Cool. So I imagine deodorant isn't the only thing you do in your life. Are there any kind of like new advancements in dermatology that are easy to do like deodorant that you're recommending these days?
That's a great question. So daily hygiene in general, of course, is important. Showering once a day to kind of help wash off any potential bacteria on the skin, which can definitely contribute to body odor as well. There are some in-office treatments that are increasingly popular these days. For example, underarm Botox. I know everyone's heard of Botox for the face and for wrinkles, but it's actually really effective underneath the arm to help reduce sweating. And it's something that has no downtime, is pretty easy to do. So we do that quite frequently. And then there are certain prescriptions that can help with sweating too. There are things that like medicated towelettes that you can apply to the area. There's oral medications. So I do want to emphasize there's a lot of options out there. And for people who are really affected by this quality of life wise, it is worth seeing a doctor and just talking to them and seeing what else is out there.
That sounds novel to me, Botox in the underarm. I've heard of it in a lot of places. My doctor actually recommended it for me as a last-ditch effort to try to cure something going on. Let's see, on my butt. I don't know a better way to say it. I guess you're a doctor. I'm not going to gross you out. Fissures, not important. It's too TMI. I get it. But tell me about the underarm treatment. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so it's a very diluted form of Botox. So you're not going for any kind of like wrinkling the way that we do on the face. You're essentially trying to affect neurotransmitter underneath the arm that contributes to sweat. And we do it in the office. It takes probably like 10 minutes, even less, just a couple of pricks under both arms. Lasts somewhere about maybe 4 to 6 months. And yeah, I personally do it myself. I'll say that on air because that's how much I believe it and that's how effective I think it is. And I think it can be really helpful, especially for people. It doesn't replace, deodorant and aluminum and things like that. But for people who, whether they just are excessive sweaters or they have to be in social situations, when the anxiety kicks in and then they start getting like the sweat pits in that area, I think it can be a great boost so that you don't have to worry about that as much.
I take, for performing, like I used to do a lot of stand-up comedy, I take beta blockers. Yeah, propranolol. That's exactly right. My favorite drug because the last three letters are LOL. I don't know why that's funny to me. But yeah, I guess there's lots of things to help with that sweat. That's all the time we have. Thanks for walking us through all this stuff. I appreciate your time, Nkem.
Of course. Thank you again for having me. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Great. Dr. Nkem Ugonabo is a board-certified fellowship-trained dermatologist at Union Derm and an assistant professor at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, the Division of Dermatology. All right, comedian, friend, woman about town, Natalie Norman is going to join us up next. And her and I are going to get into it about how to tell people what you need. Sounds like a simple thing, but a lot of relationships, romantic ones, friendships, professional relationships, end up in passive-aggressive bullshit because folks don't ask for what they need. Natalie and I are going to go over all that, and you're not going to want to miss it. We are here with comedian Natalie Norman, who is staring at the video of herself more than she is paying attention.
Obviously, I have to stare at myself.
How are you, Natalie Norman?
I am fine. It's a beautiful day. It's not so humid. And yeah, that's it.
You're in Toronto, Canada Day. What are your thoughts on the
I've never been a big Canada Day. I've never been a big, let's celebrate Canada.
Yeah.
Like, what a nerdy thing to celebrate. Your country? Ugh.
Yeah.
What country's done good? But even as a child, I was like, what is this holiday? And it's really close to my birthday. So calm down, Canada. It's my birthday soon.
When is your birthday so I don't forget and be a bad friend?
You're going to forget anyways, but July 8th. It's next Monday.
I will put a reminder in my phone and then I'll look at the reminder in the morning and say, I'll do that later in the day. And then I won't do it.
But in all fairness, I did the same to you.
No, you texted me at midnight on as it turned into my birthday.
Oh, I did? Wow, I got you this year.
You did. You got me good. I have this friend who every year on his birthday, September, let's say 18th, I get a phone call at 10 p.m.
On his birthday.
On his birthday. And he says, David, I'm not mad at you. As a favor to you, as a friend, I like you so much. I don't want to go to bed angry with you. So I'm just going to call you on my own birthday so that we can be friends and we can talk and I don't feel lonely and neglected. So every year it's like a tradition. He calls me on his birthday and I think it's a wonderful thing to do. My friend Dan, who
yeah,
it was my birthday the other day and he just had a kid. For anyone listening, it's just a friend who had a kid. He's just a guy. He's not a performer or anything. And I called him on my birthday because he's my good buddy and I know he has this new baby and he's got a lot going on and I didn't want to be mad at him, And I think it's a wonderful thing to do. If you're angry with someone for not reaching out on your birthday, you call them in a non-judgmental way. That way you speak to them and you don't go to bed angry.
I agree with you because I've had some instances in the past where I was going through a really hard time in my life and it'd be someone's birthday and they a week later, I missed it. And they'll be like, I don't like how you treated me on my birthday. You didn't post about me. And I'm like, first of all, I can't know this shit, okay? I'm a lunatic. I can barely take care of myself. You want me to do things for you? Ask me and I'll just do them.
Yeah. We're adults, right? Isn't this the benefit of adulthood and being not a well-adjusted adult for either of us.
The two of us.
Well, an element of well-adjusted adulthood that you and I could take while ignoring all the others is just be clear with others what your expectations are and what you need and want.
So, you know what? I'm finding this is really hard for a lot of people. First of all, I have actually two thoughts. I know we discussed what we're going to discuss, but this is more interesting. One, So my birthday, I get really crazy. And in the past, when I was dating someone, even if it was casual, I'd be like, my birthday is this date. Like, at minimum, you have to just wish me happy birthday. Like, ideally, I see you. If not, just like say, why you like me. You set up the thing and people are like, that's crazy, Natalie. I'm like, why? I don't want to be upset at him.
The first time I observed this done amazingly was back in my old career when I actually liked making money instead of suffering every day.
Yeah.
I was a manager and I was incoming to this team. And there was this he was older than me, one of the guys I was managing. He was, I was maybe 32 and he was almost 40. And he said in our first meeting, David, I like a lot of praise. So if you could nominate me every time a company award comes out, or when we're in a big meeting, if I'm working on something that's praiseworthy, just a little reminder, that stuff really motivates me and I really like it. So please, stay on top of that and I'm going to be really happy. And I know this sounds cheesy, but I'm just letting you know. And I was like, thank you. And so every time there was an award or something, those stupid corporate awards that mean nothing, that are boring and you hate, I would just nominate him. And he was so happy. And yes, it's a tacky thing to ask for, but I was impressed.
It's not tacky. It's not tacky. Saying what you need is not tacky. And that's the problem, is people are like, they should just know. And I'm like, no, I like words of affirmation. So every time I'm dating someone new, I'm like, if you want me to be on your best side or to sweeten up to me, just compliment me.
Yeah.
As silly as it sounds, just compliment me. You'll be in my good books forever.
There's something about asking for to be nominated for an award that is there's something weird or uncomfortable or cringy about it. But it didn't matter because he got what he needed and he was a good employee and he was motivated and he was happy with me as a manager, and it was perfect. And had he not have said that, he would have felt overlooked all the time, even though he did a great job.
Right, exactly. So even though it's cheesy, it just solves a lot of problems.
Yep. And so back to the birthday thing, just ask for what you need. Ask for
what, but so I'm a part of a Facebook group. I cannot mention it. And yes, I am an active member on Facebook. It's a dating group. And I see women post constantly being like, I don't know if you're seeing other people. And I'm like, just ask.
Yeah.
I'm literally yelling at my computer and I'm like, I don't understand. If you're dating them, you should feel comfortable enough to be like, are you seeing others? I can't understand why it's so hard. You're not even asking something big. You know what I mean? And wouldn't you rather know than struggle and then come to a Facebook group and ask a bunch of random women you don't know what to do?
That's wild. On Reddit and stuff, when people just pour their heart out, should I do this? Or maybe my boyfriend's, doing this, or am I wrong? Is everyone mad at me? I'm like, just ask. Just ask.
It's I have friends be like, are you mad at me? And I'm like, no. And then we go, it's just, I can't understand why we need to make our lives more complicated.
Could not agree more. Agree more.
But this is the thing. We are unstable people, but I think this makes us better. I think unstable people just ask for things all the time because we don't know how to, we don't want to be coy and we don't have time for that.
Yeah, I think emotionally unstable people like you and me have gone through the motions. I once, for my 30th birthday, I was kind of planning this big party and I was so excited when that same aforementioned friend Dan couldn't make it. I was like, you need a keystone guest at every party, that one guest who really holds it all together. And without them, there's no party. I don't know that he's the life of the party, but for me and my 30th birthday, he was my closest friend. I needed him there and he couldn't make it. And I just let the whole thing spiral. And I was so upset and I was so angry with him for no good reason. He had a trip booked. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is we've been through the motions of irrational anger and not communicating and what that does to us, that I think people like you and me really understand. If to avoid that, to stay mentally as stable as possible, you have to tell people what you need.
So I actually think that makes us whatever we went. I think people go through it all the time though, and just don't change.
Yeah, maybe.
So I actually think that makes us more stable.
Okay. We're stable geniuses.
Well, we're quirky. I would say we're quirky, stable geniuses.
Quirky's the, it's like when an apartment's tiny, it's cozy. When my girlfriend's insane, she's quirky.
But I think we're better partners because we're always like, hey, this is what we want. And you can say anything to us.
Yeah, I've started in arguments with Miranda, just not getting grouchy, not getting passive aggressive, and just, even if it sounds crazy, just being like, here's why I'm upset. Here's how I think you're behaving. Are you in fact behaving that way? And it's going a long way. We're getting along better these days.
Oh, nice to hear. I saw a cute picture on your Instagram of you guys having dinner without me.
I thought you were in New York. You know, you put up a flyer for a comedy show in New York.
Yes.
Which we're not at, I imagine.
No.
Okay, I was last night, or was it 2 nights? It was last night.
It was the night.
Yes, Sunday the 30th. Today's the 1st. I was going to show up to surprise you. And then for whatever reason, I think I just sent you a little message and you immediately said, I'm not in New York. I think because you thought
because I know you. I know you because you would have it would have gone two ways. I know you well enough. One, you would have either showed up or asked to come. Or two, you'd have been like, how come you're in town? You didn't message me.
Just message me. It doesn't mean we have to hang out. I know sometimes
I know, but I wasn't in town.
All right, well, good. There's something to be said for Uncle Leo in Seinfeld where he's like, you don't even call? Like, if you're visiting in a town with a friend, even if you've got like a 2-day full booked, I can't possibly see anyone because I'm going to this or that, and I'm going to be...
But that's the thing. I've learned my lesson. I know better. So if I was in town, I would have called you, but I wasn't in town.
I think if you're visiting a town where you have a buddy, you call even if you can't hang out. And there's nothing wrong with that. You make the call. I'm with Uncle Leo from Seinfeld.
Okay,
here.
So I know this.
And I've told you this.
Yes, that's why I know this.
Which brings it back to full circle here.
What we're getting at today is just tell us what you need. And a good friend will look. You know what? This also happens if I'm like getting intimate with someone.
Yeah.
I'll tell them, oh, I like, to kiss me this way. And when a guy doesn't do it, I'm actually shocked because I gave you the key to make me happy.
Yep.
That's wild to me.
That is wild. I think a lot of people don't like saying it because putting it to words is too uncomfortable or it takes them out of the moment. But if you're willing to let someone know, hey, touch me this way, do it that way, and they just refuse to do it or just are so absent-minded they aren't picking up on, it's not even a clue. It's like...
No, it's literally me being like, you're kissing me this way and I like it. Please continue.
Natalie, there's something that I need right now, and it's to take a quick break. Is that all right with you?
Yeah. Am I coming back though?
I guess that'll be the cliffhanger. We're here with Natalie Norman, Toronto-based comedian, and up next, who knows? We are here with Natalie Norman, Toronto-based comedian, who you can find at www.natalienormancomedian.net. What's your website? StalkingNatalie.com?
Just go to my Instagram. Like, who uses websites anymore?
You're right.
Stalking Natalie. And I'm back. I didn't know I was coming back.
What does that mean? Oh, back on the show. Yeah, that was the cliffhanger.
Yeah.
We're having some booking issues.
You're not having some booking issues. I don't care. You just told me 10 minutes.
Well, now I want you for 20 because I like you.
Good. I'm glad someone does.
Oh, yeah. So I manage the show now with a spreadsheet as part of an attempt to professionalize my show.
Yeah.
And I have a list of regulars who I meet on a scheduled time, and you're just below that as ad hoc regular.
Yeah, because I'm the one that's just like available on a whim's notice.
Well, do you want to put like a weekly scheduled time? I feel like it's better to do.
No, that stresses me out.
Exactly. You're welcome.
Like even for 10 minutes, it freaks me out.
We were talking about asking people for what you need rather than letting them guess. And I feel like this is the crux for me of a lot of fights in previous relationships and sometimes current, where like I'm not a mind reader. Like you're expecting me to behave this way, but you're not telling me. Now that you're telling me I can behave that way, I feel like me and Miranda now are at a mature enough point where we have good enough communication that she communicates her needs. But I feel like this is a big pitfall where couples just get angry and resentful, but don't actually ask the question, like, here's what I need you to do for me. Will you do it?
It's crazy. It's like what I've learned, once again, back to this weird Facebook group, is how difficult it is for people to be honest about their needs and wants and what's going on for clarification. And I can't understand how you're even dating a person if you can't do that.
I agree. And sometimes needs, like they're so clear in your mind. Well, like my buddy who wanted, I was talking about before, who demands a call every birthday of his or he'll feel depressed. Like, it's very clear in his mind. It's really obvious in his mind. In his mind, it's a very obvious betrayal when you don't do it. But I'm not a fucking mind reader. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and no one should be. And like, you're right. That's why there's a lot of downfalls in relationships are that simple thing of like someone expecting, Like, I can't stand it when I have like a friend who's like, I think he should just do that. And I was like, I get it's more romantic for him to kind of know what you need, but we're not children here. Tell him once and then let him do it.
Is it romantic to be dating someone who's such a pushover that they're constantly guessing what everybody's needs are and then meeting that?
No, but we're told that's a fairy tale, right? Like, that's just someone that's so receptive to you.
You know what else we're told, Natalie?
What?
Capitalism.
Exactly.
You know what else we're told, Natalie? Religion. I just mean...
Stock market.
Yeah, stock market. Astrology.
Yeah, it's like that to me. Once I heard story, I know we're going off trail. It's also... I'm a part of this Facebook group. I got to tell you, I'm going to send it to you. You're going to die.
Can you just describe this a little more? Because you just allude to this. It's a dating group for women only?
No. So there's a Facebook group basically, and I'm like breaking the rule right now where you're not supposed to, it's called, I can't remember the exact name, but basically it's like if you're online dating and you're concerned about the person you're dating or you've had like a really, really bad experience, you can post the story. You're not supposed to post like their picture or their initials. Like you could post the story to kind of see if someone else can help verify it. I joined the group because I was just like curious, and it's become a phenomenon on Facebook where women will just be like, I'm dating this guy, I think he's cheating, or I'm dating this guy, what's he like? And I'm like sitting there and I'm like, why don't you just ask him if he's dating other people? Why are we also like, one big thing is like, I've been dating him for 2 weeks, I think he's seeing other people. And I was like, my default is we're new.
Yeah.
I assume you're seeing other people unless we've had a conversation.
Wild. Yeah. You're on the app and he's only met you or she's only met you.
Yeah. You know? And what? The idea that someone knows you after 2 weeks? So like, it's kind of wild because like, and sometimes I've recognized guys on there, like a guy that I was supposed to go on a date with. And I ended up not going. And I was like, it was very interesting. And like, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. These are people's own stories. So that's my belief. But now there's a counter group.
Oh boy.
Where it's like, they expose the woman posting these stories. And I'm also a part of that group.
This sounds like a race to the bottom where everyone loses.
I'm loving it. There's one guy in the group that is like such an incel.
Yeah, I imagine like the people in the group where it's women talking men, I imagine that can get toxic at times. You know, like people really validating like the mildest negative stuff about men. And then I imagine on the flip side, it gets really toxic, like really sexist, hating women kind of stuff. I imagine it's just like, but they need each other. These two sides need each other.
Well, what everyone needs, and this is my conclusion of being in these groups, is honest and clear communication.
Yes, which is the central thesis of what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, my thing is like, you can ask someone, hey, or like, and you should assume they're dating other people, but hey, are you dating other people? Oh, I want to be exclusive. So we have this conversation. Or like people be like, he's a gaslighter. I'm like, I don't know what happened. So like, but did you talk to the person about it? And like, I can't, like, the person could be a gaslighter, but like, I do think that word is overused.
Same with narcissists, same with OCD. Like, you know, there's people that have these problems for sure.
Yeah. Yes. But I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to diagnose someone. I could tell you that someone made me feel really shitty. And it made me feel like confused. I don't know. I find it very fascinating.
Me too. Oh, this is thrilling stuff. Say what you need. I feel like that's a topic we've been ranting on for 20 minutes now.
Yeah. But I got to tell you also, sometimes I come across a story that's so wild. And I have a friend who's in the group and I call her and we're like, how did this happen?
Without
like,
naming names, can you tell me the basics of a salacious story, Natalie?
Like a girl will be like, I've been married for 10 years to this guy and I just saw on his phone that he's been on the apps and we have a baby coming soon and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to confront him. And I'm like, oh my God. And then other women are like, I've been seeing your husband. And you're like,
whoa, that's why. I mean, that's entertainment. Awful, but entertainment. Well,
it's like, you're like, wow, people are out here being that wild. And that like careless. And obviously, yes, it always happens. And apparently it's very big in New York, this group.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like you can't cheat anymore, which is not a bad thing, by the way. I'm not complaining. I just mean with apps and social media, like before you could just fly to another city and that'd be that.
But what kind of lunatic who's in a relationship and posts pictures of themselves?
Like on an app?
Yeah. And assumes that their partner won't find out.
The kind of lunatic that's providing the entertainment for you. Are you in the New York one?
No, my sister is, and she's married, by the way. And she's just in it because she thought it was entertaining. And she's like, the stories there are crazy.
Wild. Do you have any friends who something like that has happened to? Or have you ever been seeing someone and then the girlfriend or the wife or the pregnant wife reaches out to you?
I've never had that. I mean, it was like a few years ago during COVID, during Christmas, I started talking to a guy and he had COVID and we talked for a while and then we went on a date and it like, what I don't like and I don't do anymore is talk to someone for a little while before we meet up because it does, for me, create some like artificial attachment. Anyways, he decided he wanted to pursue it. Fine. Some girl that I know comes up to me in person and is like, did you go out with this guy? And I was like, I did. How do you know that? And she never revealed that. But her experience was very similar, which is fine. Like, I don't actually think he did anything wrong. Like, I have to hold myself accountable to be like, manage my limerence, if you know what that is.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Limerence is like this term. It's like you fantasize and you build up a fake relationship. Anyways, a lot of people do it. Anyways, I thought that was strange because I don't know how she knew that I had gone on one date with this guy.
What was her relationship to him?
The same story. She said she met him online. They started talking. It was like 10 days. They met up and then he all of a sudden dropped her. And like, I'm not upset with him because like, that's fine. He was really honest with me. And like, I agree with him. I don't think we would have been good together. But what was weird to me was how did she know?
So this guy cultivates very quick, very close, very like boundaries dropped relationships with women and then drops them very quickly.
What it is he wants to sext and he wants to sext very intimately.
See, in your attempt to make this more PG, you didn't mention the sexting part.
No, I was just occurring to me that that's what made it feel intimate is like it was very intimate sexting.
Okay. And how did this woman know?
I still don't know.
She could have been his girlfriend. She could have seen him on his phone.
She wasn't. She said she wasn't his girlfriend. They just dated. But like at one point, maybe I was following him on Instagram and she saw that.
See, this is how you can't get away with anything these days. And it's not a bad thing. But like you basically have to not be on the internet if you want to cheat. But then the people you're cheating with are going to be like, why are they not on the internet? That's creepy.
I don't know. I date so many men who maybe they all have other girlfriends, but like don't have Instagram.
Suspect, Natalie.
I mean, I don't give a
Natalie, I got to ask you something. It's very important to me, and it's a big part of my feelings and my wants and my needs.
Yep.
We got to end this. Is that all right? Natalie Norman is here, comedian from Toronto. Find her on the internet at STALKING. I am dyslexic, and I spelt it right. You're welcome. Natalie, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
This was a good one.
It was a good, interesting.
Compelling, you might even say.
Yeah.
Like NPR on DMT in hell.
NPR. Oh, actually, that's really good. That should be your log line. Is
that the British national anthem? Did I get that one right? Coming up next, foreign correspondent Tony Five out of London, England, is going to walk us through the elections in the UK and about life, the universe, and everything. So a British person's take on the election in just a few moments. We are here with Tony Five, our foreign correspondent, and if you're listening, this will be the first time you'll hear his voice on the show. But what you won't hear is just moments ago, Tony and I recorded something that was about 10 minutes that will never be released. Tony, what was the game we played?
It was called Convince Me. So basically, I gave David some wonderful topics, and he had to convince me, Tony Five, of why I should believe in it. So why you'll never hear from it, dear listener, is my first topic was racism. So he had to convince me why he was and is absolutely horrific racist and the points of joining it. He then had to convince me why he was a horrific...
Well, my point there was you were like, can you speak out against a certain group of people? You listed black people, and I said, I can't give a good example except for the fact that you are one of them and you are making me play this game, which is annoying.
I think the other one was sexism, why men are the more dominant sex and should be, kings of the world. And I think you mentioned Randy Andy and King Charles.
Yeah.
What was the other wonderful topic I gave you?
Why we should support World War II Germany. It just went on, and you kept on. And honestly, it wasn't funny. And so if something's going to be offensive, it's got to be funny. And so for me, what we just did, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. So I just want people to have some insight into the way Tony comes up with ideas for this show when he's left to his own devices.
I like the juice and I like the squeeze, but I did like David's analogy of squeezing juices, which was good.
Juice, not Jews, Tony.
Oh, sorry.
Let's do some foreign corresponding. You are in the UK. There is an election almost, 2-3 days from now?
4th of July, David.
Are you that upset that the Americans grabbed some muskets and shot at you and then declared independence that you have to be like, we're going to do it on your independence? That's wild.
Exactly. We're going to ruin your day as well as ours. We're going to ruin everything for everybody.
I mean, there's nothing more British than ruining everything for everybody.
Correct.
That is your national pastime.
It is. The biggest mood at the moment is that obviously England played football last night and we won. Horrifically poor game. Now, I'm not a football fan by any means, but England played very, very poorly and somehow managed to win 2-1 against Slovakia. But what was horrifically funny is that there's a game of 90 minutes, and I think England scored in the 91st and 93rd or something like that after extra time. Up until the 90th minute, every single report, tweet, X, whatever you want to call it, were just bad-mouthing England. How goddamn awful they were, how they should all work in a Walmart, and it's just horrific. As soon as they score, the mood completely changes. It's so funny. It's just a complete seesaw effect of people loving each other. I loved it.
You're not a soccer head, though, are you?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, it doesn't bother me in the slightest. But I just do find just the national past, because it's the national sport, how people get so invested in it. I do find it quite scary. People on the streets running around, vomiting on themselves. And it's national news.
Soccer hooligans are a real thing in the UK, aren't they?
Oh, yes. It's funny. You guys in the States don't have that wild,
Not
stabbing each other.
True. I think after a finals game, whether it's basketball, hockey, football, I remember living in San Francisco and the 49ers won the Super Bowl twice in 3 years, and people were burning mattresses in the street. I think a cop car got destroyed, but it wasn't violent towards, no business windows got smashed, or very few did, and no one really got hurt, but it was people screaming in the street and making a ruckus, but it was celebratory. It wasn't, I don't know why I just pronounced that like a British person. Celebratory is how we say it. You say celebratory?
Why did they set mattresses on fire? What's wrong with the beds?
I think it's just there was a mattress on the side of the street that someone had thrown out waiting for the garbage truck to come and grab it. Or the rubbish lorry. Is that what you call it? A rubbish lorry?
Yeah, rubbish van. Rubbish lorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Celebratory. Is that how you say it?
I never said that word. Now that have you ever had that problem where you think of a word way too much and it just doesn't make sense? Celebratory.
Yeah, we say
no.
I don't know. It just happened to me.
Exactly.
We say celebratory is how we say it, and you say celebratory.
This is great content. I can't believe you chose this over my "Do you hate Jews" one. I'm ridiculous. I mean, you haven't even got nothing to juice. No juicer. You haven't even got a fruit in your hand.
You asked me a question. It does happen all the time because I used to live in Canada, then I lived in California, now I live in New York. And my accent has been pulled in 3 different ways, and I know all 3 different pronunciations. And so when I go to pronounce a word like drama or drama, I don't even know who I am anymore because I grew up saying drama. When I moved to the U.S., I got pulled in the drama direction. So it happens to me all the time. But back to why they light mattresses on fire, I think it's just to have some fun, a bunch of people screaming. They're very happy their team won. They want a bonfire. There's a mattress available. Bada bing, bada boom. You do the math.
Right, rather than actually fighting, as it were. Because here they'll fight. It'll be violent. It'll be really violent. Like uber crowds of alpha males running around trying to stab each other, punch each other. Weirdly enough, the sort of men that wouldn't be able to play the sport itself are the most passionate about the sport.
And it's weird because the next day these people go back to their jobs. They aren't people who just run around beating people in the street. I mean, maybe they're not great people. Maybe they get really drunk all the time. But this sort of riotous behavior, it really only comes out at the end of the soccer match, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Very, like I said, it's a very strange thing. And obviously, and also today Wimbledon started. I don't know whether you're a big tennis fan. But Wimbledon started again today. And again, that's the complete opposite.
Do you like any sports at all?
I'll watch them in the background. I've watched snooker a few times. Darts is pretty cool. Croquet, amazing.
When I used to race road bikes. I used to...
No.
You didn't know that? I used to shave my legs, I used to train every day. I used to ride 500 miles a week training and...
cycles?
Yeah. Like Tour de France kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. In a different life. I busted my knee up when I was 26 and I threw in the towel. That was it.
Competitive? You were a competitive road
I
biker.
had a racing license. I would race, but competitive is... In the sense that I competed, I was competitive, but I was not a competitive competent. I wasn't a competitive competitor.
Like Tour de France.
Yeah, I was in the lowest rung of competitive, and I was not particularly good. But yeah,
were you in the pelotons and stuff like that? Did
Absolutely,
you ever win?
Yeah.
That's incredible. So you used to have to go behind other people to catch their airflow and speed up and stuff.
Because I was a small dude, my power when we were on the flats was lousy, but when you're small, it's really easy to climb because you got to pull up less weight. So I was a really good climber, but then on the downhill and the flat, I had to tuck in behind some bigger guys who were stronger than me. Otherwise, I would get dropped. I can't.
Do you know, if I'd had 100 guesses at what sport you would have been doing, that would have been 101.
I know, but I used to watch the Tour de France. That was when Alberto Contador was the guy who was on top. It was funny. I quit maybe 2010, 2011, and then in 2012, could have been 2013, Lance Armstrong went on Oprah to admit that he had been doping, which to me is just the funniest place to admit to doping.
Were you under his team?
No, I didn't really like U.S. Postal. They were never kind of like my thing. I like some of the European teams. I like the one out of Kazakhstan has a good team, which is really funny to me.
Exactly.
It's like the one thing the country pumps money into.
So, have you heard of a guy who won it called Bradley Wiggins?
No, is that a more recent thing?
Maybe the last 5 years. And weirdly, we're talking about this, but what's your stance on this? So this guy was he's a sir. He was a knight of the realm. His name is Sir Bradley Wiggins. He won the Tour de France. I think he was one of the first English people to ever win it. And he's gone from, Olympic medals and Tour de France winning and all that sort of stuff. He's now sofa surfing and he's completely broke and he's going to go bankrupt and he's thinking of selling his medals. It's a real rags to riches story. And I was thinking about that, people that have been on top of the world, like your Lance Armstrongs and, that guy that shot his girlfriend who was the Blade Runner, Oscar Pistorius.
Yeah, and then of course, what's his name? Baldwin? Alec Baldwin was top of his game, and then he shot the woman on the set, and now he's maybe going to face criminal charges. And actually, did he get convicted?
I think he was found guilty, but or some the armorer was found guilty. Sorry. But I still think they've got this case.
Yeah, he's on trial
him.
still. He's
on trial. And then somebody, again, it was me. I was going to talk to you about this, actually, weirdly. Kevin Spacey. Where do you stand on Kevin Spacey?
I mean, he's a creep, based on what's come out about him. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was convicted, right? Or were they all dropped?
That I don't know.
Because, again, he's another one. I can't... Well, I understand how it happens, but obviously multiple Oscar winner, made millions in terms of, he was like a golden child. Anything that you put him in, it was immediately going to be doing well or people will draw. And now he said that he's going to be made homeless, he can't live where he lives and I just thought to myself, God, how do these guys or girls cope with sort of being on top? And then just hitting rock bottom. What is in them to pick them up?
I think the most striking example of that for me is Andy Dick.
Oh yes, the guy, the blonde hair and the glasses. What happened to him?
Well, I'll tell you about it when we come back. But I'll finish with this. Yeah, I was really into that team Astana, which is based out of Kazakhstan. And one of my favorite cyclists was British, or I guess he was Manx. He was from Isle of Man, but Mark Cavendish.
Mark Cavendish, yeah.
Not important. We're here with Tony talking about falls from grace. I guess organically, that's how it came up.
Yeah, very good.
Not that Andy Dick had any grace about him, but we'll be back with more of this in a moment. We are back with Tony 5, foreign correspondent. I do want to get to the British elections in a moment because he has to do some foreign corresponding eventually. Today might actually be the chance. We are talking about celebrity falls from grace. And I think a striking example of that is Andy Dick. Tony, do you know much about Andy Dick?
There's obviously comedian response I can give you, but I know that he was on certain sort of sitcoms type thing, blonde hair, kind of wild blonde hair, glasses. Reminds me of Sideshow Bob from The Simpsons. But yeah, tell me about him. What happened to him? You're right, I haven't seen him anymore at all. What's going on?
Yeah, he had the show called The Andy Dick Show. He was like in all kinds of stuff. He was
okay.
Like he was in, I don't even know. I mean, he did cameos in all kinds of cartoons like King of the Hill. He was in Star Trek Voyager. He was in Family Guy. I mean, he was in ER. He did cameos in everything. He was in movies, but mostly he was a stand-up comedian, and he was like an insult comic. He had a big mouth, and he was known to just say whatever came to his mind. He was offensive. Not like, I mean, by today's standard, he probably would have been canceled, but by the standard of the early 2000s, late 90s,
he was fine.
He was fine.
Okay.
He's become like a drug addict. He's been in and out of jail. He's been caught like being interviewed like homeless with like inexplicable black eyes. He got caught up with these like live streamers that were like prank live streamers and they like beat him up. I don't really know, but and he's been arrested on drug addiction, sexual misconduct. It's been wild, and just he's like about to die or something. I mean, he's on the streets and drug addicted, and he wasn't like that rich and famous, but he was like that for a while. He was this Hollywood A-lister, at least B-lister.
Wow.
And it's just sad to see, I guess, you know.
Was he on like Saturday Night Live? Was he that sort of level of comedian, or was he sort of like you say a B-lister type thing?
I don't know that he was ever on SNL, but he was like, you know, would make his appearances on late night TV and stuff as a guest and maybe do stand-up sets. So he was making his rounds.
Yeah, but I guess there are people that have recovered, like Mel Gibson being like one of the most prominent ones. Robert Downey Jr., a famous one who's gone from, you know, riches to rags to riches again, I guess, the inverted way. He's fantastic and obviously top of his games now. And he quite openly admits it, that he was very lucky. He could have ended up like 99% of the other people that have gone down that path.
Yeah, my favorite comedian, Joni Rivers, she never had like a drug problem, but she would have whole swaths of her career where she would hit a bad movie, a bad TV show, it would get canceled. She'd be like a D-lister, someone mocked, barely getting booked, to like back on top, you know, having great success, being well-loved. In her like long and varied career, she would have these ups and downs, but not like down in the dumps, addiction, ready to die. Down and out, but just like careers in the dumps.
Careers highs
like
and lows.
Almost bankrupt and then back on top kind of stuff.
Well, it's glad we don't have to have any of these issues because we're permanently down in the bankrupt issues, aren't we, David?
There you go. The UK elections.
Yes.
Looks like the Labour Party's going to win. I mean, it seems like a shoo-in.
Massive majority. It's mainly a shoo-in. One question I was going to ask you, do you have, or is it legal there to have comedic or joke representative?
Comedic or joke?
So in particular elections, there are legal joke things. So for example, in one constituency is a guy called Count Binface. If you Google him, he is standing up in a local election against Rishi Sunak.
He looks like the knight who says knee from Monty Python. He's got this horrible helmet, and I guess it's a rubbish bin or a trash can.
Yeah, trash bin. So his name is Count Binface. He's absolutely hilarious. He stands up in most elections. Last couple of years, he's actually got votes. Like, as in, quite likely, maybe in the hundreds, and could have won.
I think that's amazing. Yes, I don't see it so much in the U.S. because you have to either be a Republican or a Democrat.
Right.
There's not too many independents on the ticket who gets voted for. I'm not sure how often it occurs in the U.S. I know that it does. At the municipal level in New York, there's a guy who ran for mayor who kept on screaming, the rent is too damn high, and he was in like the rent is too damn high party.
Nice.
There was also this like weird wizard guy who'd wear a wizard hat and talk about the aliens. But in Canada... Yes, absolutely. In fact, last week, I covered one riding or district in Canada during a by-election where this party to protest how anyone can be on the ballot or whatever. There was like 85 candidates on the ballot, and one of their candidates, and they're all like joke, satire, making fun of the government, and one of the candidates got 0 votes. And it's the first time in Canada a federal candidate ever got 0 votes. It's like it's a first record. So I was very proud of the guy. In fact, maybe we should get the guy on the show now that I think about it.
Can we find out? I mean, he's not going to be busy, is he? Could we ask Danny if we can get him over?
Yeah, we should. But the answer is yes. The long version is yes, but the short answer is yes. There are joke candidates, certainly in Canada, yes, in the US, but it varies jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
Because I'm guessing it must cost this chap a hell of a lot of money, in terms of publicity and election campaigning. But he's done so well, and only because our government are so poor that his ranks are going up. It's very likely that we could have a man dressed as a bin running local government. So
when I first got my start doing radio, if you could even call it that, in San Francisco, I did it out of a shop. That's how we met. We've told the story before. You walk by the shop, you called in the show, yada, yada, yada. But the owner of the shop, her husband, is a famous kind of artist, performance artist. He's got a Wikipedia page. His name's John Rinaldi, but his artist name is Chicken John. And John helped me set up the radio station. I don't know if I'd consider him a friend. I haven't talked to him in years, but he was always very supportive of me. He ran for the mayor of San Francisco in 2007 as a joke. He referred to himself as an experimental candidate. He organized like flash mobs. He was as flippant as he could be. He would wear like fake masks and mustaches to these events. He organized like a zombie flash mob as part of his campaign at one of the mayoral debates. And he took a little money to raise money for all these pranks. And then he was planning on like running out of the race. And he realized that if he did that, he could go to jail for violating campaign financing laws.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, because he's raised money.
So he had to like complete his campaign, and his campaign at the last minute kind of like turned serious, because if he didn't actually run and he didn't follow through with it and like finish the whole thing, the money that he had spent and the money that he raised would have been done so illegal. So he ended up like settling with the ethics commission, and he didn't get in trouble. But you got to be careful with these things. Speaking of the money, if you're going to raise money to actually run for office, you got to be serious about it, depending on where you live, because you could be breaking laws. So if you're a joke candidate, you got to be careful.
Yeah, I always wonder, what does he do with his time? Because he spends so much of his time as this guy, Count Binface. No one knows who he is or what he does, but he sort of walks around and basically sort of tries to muster up support. But people like him. He's brilliant.
They certainly do. Can we talk about the Labour Party's leader? Because I was watching John Oliver, a well-loved American host.
Sir Keir Starmer.
And John Oliver's position is nobody knows anything about that guy, and he's just the most boring person, most neutral person as possible. But in some sense, that's what Britain needs right now. After 14 years of like budget cuts and horrors under the Conservatives, and them not delivering what they promised or screwing up the way they delivered it, and slashing budgets on the NHS, leaving the NHS in shambles, leaving government housing and people who need benefits and need medical care in worse shape than they were 14 years ago. Just having a party that like doesn't make a scene, is just like going to fall in the background and just kind of do their job, hopefully as best they can or as worst they can, but without causing any more damage. Like, that's really what Britain needs right now. Do you agree with that position?
It's the prime ministerial equivalent of having parties in Vegas for the last 14 years and now going to Chuck E. Cheese. Nobody's bothered. Everybody's easygoing. You can get some food. There's a little bit of nutrition there, but not much.
Britain just wants a government that fades into the background and like keeps the government running and like doesn't cause further scenes or damage right now.
Exactly. That's what they want. Just some quiet, sit in the background. Let's just take it easy. Let's not ruffle any fellas. Let's just let it go.
Who are you going to vote for? Or do you wish not to disclose?
No, Binface.
No, I'm serious.
It's funny they say that, because most people will never admit. I am actually going to vote Labour. You're right. I think we do need to change.
We don't agree politically on a lot of things when you actually boils down, but I respect your right to your beliefs, even though you hate poor people.
I do.
But my view of you is if the Conservatives weren't such assholes for the last 14 years, like that's where you would cast your lot. But right now you're looking for a change because they've done such a bad job. Is that an accurate portrayal of your political views?
Relatively, I think the original Conservatives were there for people that wanted to work. I think they would reward people who put in the effort. And historically, I think in the UK anyway, Labour was for people, they supported people who quite happily would rely on a benefit system.
That's such a crazy view that people, like, living on the benefits system is not a glamorous life to me.
I know, but when you look at how people on the benefit system in the UK abuse it so much.
No, I disagree. When you look at how conservative media portrays that to try to sell a political view to you, and then you buy it like it's a Chuck E. Cheese pizza, and that's all the time we have for.
David, yes, I will be voting for the Liberal Democrats tomorrow or on Wednesday, who have absolutely no political standpoint at all.
Tony, thank you. Appreciate your time.
David, always a pleasure.
Nickelback. That band everyone loves to hate. Well, there is a documentary on Netflix all about them, an intimate portrait, something that goes a little deeper than the superficial. It's called Hate to Love Nickelback. So I'm going to have someone on to discuss that and perhaps give some insight into one of the most divisive acts in Canadian music history. There is a new doc on Netflix called Hate to Love Nickelback. And it got me thinking, Nickelback, sort of the go-to band when people say, hey, what's your least favorite band? But what this documentary does, it looks a little deeper and it answers the question, are Nickelback deserving of that hate? It's an intimate portrait, and I'm here to discuss it with Sammy Younan. He's the host of My Summer Lair. That's a podcast. You can find that wherever podcasts are streamed, downloaded, played, whatever. Sammy, thanks for talking to me today.
Thank you so much for having me on your program. This should be an inspiring conversation, right? I'm sure your handful of listeners will not hate it.
Yes, my handful of listener. We use the singular form, although I heard recently we're up to 2. Now that person is my mother. But still, that's 100% growth. Look, I'm not a fan of Nickelback. I do find the music mildly annoying, but honestly, when I say music, I'm just thinking of that track Photograph. That's all I can picture. And my favorite band, I feel like if you're to evaluate them by their most popular track, like I really like the Talking Heads. And when people say, hey, I like Burning Down the House, I'm like, yeah, I guess it's a good song, but that's not what they're about. And I know that I probably fall guilty to the same thing where I'm sort of generalizing. I'm loving to hate them, if you will. So I guess my question is, let's start here. Are you a fan of Nickelback?
I am not a fan of Nickelback, but at the same token, I'm not a hater either. They're just like there. You know what I mean? Like Coldplay, right? Like I won't go out and buy a Coldplay CD, but Coldplay also has a fair share of haters as well. Maybe not to the degree of Nickelback, but people hate on Coldplay.
You just hit a nerve right there because I am a closet Coldplay fan. If people start insulting them, I'll get on board and I'll say they suck. But the truth is, I think Chris Martin, the singer's voice, is really nice. It's got this wonderful resonant quality to it. So I guess I'm falling victim when I hate on Nickelback to the same thing that I think is unfair about Coldplay. Look, they're for sure cheesy and for sure their radio hits are annoying. But underneath it all, not terrible artists, in my opinion. And I know that's probably true for Nickelback. And yet here I am, still hating on them, still thinking that song Photograph is so annoying.
So, but is Coldplay, though, like for you, a guilty pleasure, though?
Yes.
Like you just listen in the dark room and you don't like, you know what I mean? You won't buy a t-shirt or go to a concert. But if a song comes on the radio, you'll leave it on.
Correct. I would never be It's same with that band that white people like, Fish. I really like Fish. But I would never admit to it. And when people start bashing it, I'm just like, yeah, I hate them too. Because I'm spineless, I guess, is the problem.
But this is the thing with hate, right? Hate has an interesting aspect in terms of like pop culture because it builds credibility, right? Like hate is like a Scooby-Doo villain. If you say The Godfather is a good movie, everybody thinks The Godfather is a good movie. You're not really saying anything controversial or like a strong opinion. But if you sit there and you say, like, Tom Hanks sucks, you now have to defend it, right? That's why I said it's like a Scooby-Doo villain, because, like, you have to pony up the PowerPoint presentation. You can't just say Tom Hanks sucks and then just walk away. I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you punk kids. You gotta explain and hate properly. You can't just hate and dismiss and then walk away.
I agree. And honestly, bad press is better than no press. If everyone is hating on Nickelback, and if Nickelback's the butt of every music joke, that's a mention that they get in circles that may not have ever heard them, that would not ever listen to them. And it kind of keeps the image alive. It keeps the popularity there, if only in the opposite way. So there is an argument that no press is bad press. And so everyone hating on them isn't really hurting them as much as you think. But I think it hurt them personally, which is what this documentary looked into. Like, imagine being that band. Imagine being the lead singer of that band.
Yeah, and they talked about it in the documentary because after a certain point, you can't exist nowadays. You're going to exist online no matter what. And the problem with that is that when you exist online, you get the positive and the negative, right? You can't there's ways you can mute words and things like that. But for the most part, the noise is still going to get in. And so for them, the negative stuff got in, and it does start to hurt after a little while because it's a personal thing. And there's even an example of some of the band members talking about how their own kids, when they were sending their kids to school, the kids were getting bullied on the playground. And again, if you hate on Nickelback, then that's fine. But when you start attacking the kids of Nickelback, that seems a little too excessive.
I think that really provides that intimate portrait of how deep bullying can go, right? Like an offhand joke about my dad's band means that me as a 12-year-old is going to get beaten up in the schoolyard. Any father, even if they can take the criticism, even if they have thick skin, they're going to be like, this is awful. This is not something any child deserves, let alone for that,
So Nickelback is the punishment, I guess. It's go to your room and listen to 3 Nickelback CDs.
Off to the bullies.
Yeah.
So tell me more about the band. I don't really know much about them.
Yeah. So the basic. So if you watch the documentary, there is an origin story as well. It's not just a documentary on hating on Nickelback, but basically, the core group formed in Hanna, Alberta, which is obviously most people don't even know where Calgary and Edmonton is. So, but Hanna is a really small place. And what ended up happening was they moved to Vancouver and were able to either find this groove or somehow connect with an audience. Their songs somehow blew up, and it's one of those things where Canada had some strange popular music, from Celine Dion to Drake. We're all over the place. We don't have a quote unquote Canadian sound like there's Britpop, right? There's no Cam Pop. And so this was one of the bands that for whatever reason blew up and started to connect with a wide range of people. They were selling out tours, selling out CDs. And there's a statistic in the documentary that at How You Remind Me, one of their bigger hits, that was considered one of America's most played songs ever. At its peak, it would be playing every 3.2 minutes somewhere in the US.
Wow.
So that's also where the hate comes from as well. It's the backlash, right? Because you couldn't get away from it.
It was just playing so much. But I feel like when they came up in Vancouver, that would have been the early 2000s, late 90s kind of thing?
Yeah, late 90s. Yeah, so they were considered Nirvana light. That was also, I think, the other reason for the hate was because you had Soundgarden and you had Smashing Pumpkins and Nirvana and all these other bands that people liked, the opposite of Nickelback, right?
Yeah, but there was an angsty, grungy, hard rock sound that was popular that tapped into something with Gen Xers at that time. And Nickelback,
Linkin Park.
Yeah, by all records and measures, Nickelback had that, and yet this backlash for these reasons you're saying. But yet their fans love them. They do well on tour. I have a friend who's coming to New York, where I live, to see Nickelback, and he's so excited about it. And I've been making fun of him, but the concert I think is sold out, and he's really excited about it. So they do have that core group of supporters that has led to success despite all this backlash and criticism.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I was kind of frustrated with the documentary because it didn't define the hate. So is it that people hate Nickelback or is it that they hate the fan base, right? Because those are two different things. Recently, the Boston Celtics and the Edmonton Oilers were in the NBA Finals and NHL Finals. There was a number of articles and social media posts where people were just hating on the Celtics fan base or the Oilers fan base. They're they're terrible fans, they're douchebag fans or whatever it may be. But the team itself, the Celtics were fine, right? So And I think this is where the documentary kind of falters a little bit, is that people are hating on Nickelback as a way to kind of shorthand and hate their fan base and who they think their fans are as a stereotype, or is it that they hate the actual music?
At the risk of stereotyping, because I genuinely don't know, what is the negative stereotype? And I understand this may not be your view of them, but what would be someone who's stereotyping Nickelback's fans' view of them?
Your classic drives a truck, probably has a mullet or had a mullet, drinks beer, kind of, not quite rednecky, because we don't really sort of do that in Canada, but that sort of like hockey intense fan. He's the type of person who would like put on like TikTok or whatever, like a video of him playing Nickelback just to annoy his coworkers in the office, if that makes sense. Right? Like it's a revenge.
I do like that there's that trolling aspect of it, if not done ironically. To me, that there's a certain irony there.
You can weaponize Nickelback.
If only our global superpowers would use Nickelback instead of stocking nuclear armaments and things like this. Any takeaways from the documentary? Was it a good watch for you? Would you recommend it?
Yeah, I think it is, because this is the thing where like we have to figure out how to hate properly. And as you said at the top, right? Like the words did hurt, right?
Yeah.
Sticks and stones, right? And like it's just being part of pop culture. There are movies you don't like, and there's actors you don't like, and there are bands that you don't like. So it's all of us have to kind of figure out how to hate properly without like causing tears, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and sticks and stones may break your bones. Words may never hurt me. The problem is you can use words to incite the throwing of sticks and stones, which is so obvious in that horrible example of the Nickelback band members' kids getting bullied and beaten up. Thanks for discussing this with me, Sammy.
Well, we had to. It's Canada Day, right?
There it is. It is Canada Day. Hate to Love Nickelback is the name of the documentary, but I am here with Sammy Younan, host of My Summer Lair. That's available wherever podcasts are found. Sammy, thank you again. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Well, our show has an intern, as I'm sure you know if you've been listening, and I am going to have him on in just a moment. His name is Zhang, and he's got a topic to discuss. It's how today's media is creating a negative climate. Sounds highbrow. I'm an idiot. But Zach isn't, so let's give this a shot. You're going to love what we have to say. So don't change that dial. Every time. We are here with intern Zhang. Zach, welcome.
Hello, David. I am intern Zhang, the most intern of interns. Would you agree?
You are interning, but you are not interned.
Yep, you're right. You're right.
Oh, man. Ugh, that one was a little off color. Speaking of internment or treating people badly, Canada Day. I feel like a lot of folks in the last 5 years have this mixed opinion of Canada Day. And I remember the residential school dead children were found around Canada Day a few years ago. And it's like, okay, well, we don't have a lot to celebrate. And I'm kind of like, the mind that people can hold two contradictory things in their head at the same time. I think that's very human to be like, okay, I've screwed up, I'm a bad person, but also I'm going to celebrate the things I'm proud of. I can do that on a personal level. I think a country can do that as well. We can say there's things we're not proud of, but also celebrate the country, right? I mean, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. It's all about learning from the history that we've been through and trying to not repeat those mistakes, even though, the saying goes, history will repeat itself. However, we can try our best to mitigate the damages, because I'm not going to lie. The world has been filled with some hate recently, and it's kind of becoming a little scary. You know what I mean? It's kind of becoming a little scary. There's been a certain incident that happened at University of Waterloo a couple days ago, actually, where they got hit with a 1.5 million lawsuit, or at least the student body did, because of protests for, a certain situation.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. And the most appalling thing to me personally is that one of these people that got sued was someone I went to high school with, and she was actually the head of the student body.
So these students they've got an encampment.
Mm-hmm. And I don't recall the complete story, but I'm pretty sure it's $1.5 million because of like damages and things surrounding that because of the protests.
So these students, they were standing up for what they thought was right, and they set up an encampment and a protest, and now they're being sued for $1.5 million. I don't know. Students have a right to protest. I don't know. I mean,
I agree. But this is why I say things are getting kind of scary in Canada, because the crime rate is just going way up here in Toronto, at least in Southern Ontario. And just the other day, the same student head body that I'm talking about, the friend that I went to high school with, she got jumped at a festival the other day and got stabbed.
Wow. So she's not doing so well.
She's not doing so well. She's just a prime target of political opportunity, pretty much.
Wow.
It's a scary place out here. It's a scary place.
It's interesting because a part of me is like, okay, that's as worse now as it's ever been. Like, I watched the American political system. I moved here in 2012, and as a Canadian before then, what goes on in the U.S. politically bleeds into Canada. It's not like you don't see it. I'm like, okay, It's worse now than ever. But then it's always been a thought of mine. Is that just what every generation thinks when you hit your mid-20s, when you hit your 30s? You're like, oh, this is really bad. It's markedly bad than it was before. But your parents went through that cycle. The grandparents went through that cycle. So I'm always like, is it just normal for people when they kind of pass the early adolescence to say it's worse now than ever? Or is it actually worse now than ever? And how do you tell the difference? And
who knows? That's a really good question. It could just be that I'm just thinking back to the past and thinking specifically about the good times. And it could be the case that it is true. Things are changing here in Canada. But I would like to believe that it's not just me gaslighting myself into believing that I'm not doing well, and it's that the world around me is getting worse, not me.
It's hard to say. Like when I was, I don't know, 13,
It is hard to say.
16, I don't remember how old. When was Clinton impeached? Maybe like 99? So I was 13, maybe 12 when Clinton got impeached, Bill Clinton, and I didn't notice it. You know, I was just, oh, he's the president of the United States. He's our neighbor. And Chrétien was the prime minister of Canada. And I just didn't notice these things. But looking back on it, that impeachment trial was probably a complete and utter show. Like, it was probably, people at the time thought, okay, the American political discourse can't get any worse. So is there any difference between now and then? Like, I think yes. I think it's markedly worse. But I guess I don't know is my question.
Maybe with the uprising of free speech, and by free speech I mean free speech of any kind, including hate speech, I feel like things have gotten worse because people are just not scared to voice their opinions. I had this chat a day ago with this guy I was ordering a donor from, I think, a Greek donor from, and he was like, yeah, no, things are just not going well. Like back in the day, people would know how to communicate with others. People would know morals, mannerisms, how to actually socialize like a decent human being. I mean, nowadays, someone who's 21 years old, 2 years younger than me, his cousin who's 21 years old, is just super disrespectful to the parents and whatnot. And to me, it's just very surprising because I think of it as my parents dropped everything in their lives to come here and start a better life. So what's the point of disrespecting that for a worse life, right? Because they're in locations that are not like the slums. They're in rich houses. Why would you throw that all away just to pretend to act like a goon or something, right?
Interesting.
I think you know what? I think the prime culprit is like clout chasing culture, social media and TikTok and brain rot generation type of thing where people will do anything to go viral. I think that type of stuff just like disregards mannerisms completely and just goes on with how you can do the most stupid stuff to get yourself out there, right?
Yeah, I think there might be something to that, except I was with these friends last night or 2 nights ago. And it's a couple. They're a married couple, 2 dudes. And they're a little younger than me, but not much. And they were just talking about how things have changed this way and things have changed that way. And all of their evidence of how society's changed was like, people are talking this way on TikTok. And I'm not really on TikTok at all. And so I was like, what are you talking about? Like, they were talking about changes in the record industry and changes in the trends of music and changes in this and that. And I was like, what? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't see any of this. And it's kind of like the old adage goes, if you're creating an outrage like on Twitter, if you're creating an outrage on Facebook, just deactivate your account and it all goes away. And I sometimes think like, it's the same way with the news, right? If you're watching the news every day and you're horrified about what you're seeing, you just shut off the news and walk out your front door. And yes, maybe things are bad out your front door, But probably they aren't, especially if you're in Canada or the US. You're going to go to a coffee shop. You're going to walk to the corner store. You're going to see your neighbor and just say hello politely. Like, is life really as bad as, let's say, the presidential debate or these people on TikTok complaining that society's changed in these ways? I don't know. I think it's more holistic than that, I guess is what I'm saying. So I know you're saying that like people have this impatience to them now. They do, especially younger people, but not all young people. Like I'm not on that shit, and I don't really, it doesn't really affect my life and I don't really notice it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I guess it is just dependent on what the algorithm feeds you, I suppose. For me in particular.
But if you're not biting, if you're not taking the bait.
Yeah, if you're not biting it, then you're good. Ignorance is bliss, as they say, and I stand by that. Ignorance is bliss, just be unaware. But right now, I feel like the media is just...
Am I ignorant if I'm not paying attention to an algorithm, Zach?
Anyway, what I wanted to say was, I think the media may be pushing the violent narratives way too much, or maybe Toronto News in particular is just pushing crime rates way too much instead of other happy, uplifting news. And maybe that's just twisting my perspective of the world around me right now and making me a little more unhopeful than I should be.
Yeah, it can get you down, and then you get this anecdotal evidence, like this friend I know got jumped. And it's like, That's awful. And crime may well be on the rise. And her getting jumped may be a function of that. But like you can't, I mean, I guess you can, but if you let that worry you every time you leave the door or every time you see anything or hear anything about your city, you know, that's really going to color your experience, and it may not, you may not experience any crime. It's like we had a break-in in our apartment many years ago, and my girlfriend confronted the intruder. She's okay, don't worry, it's a story for another day. But like she can't check the New York break-in news because it'll mess her up. But she feels safe in her home. And, you know, if there's a noise or something, I help her out. And, you know, if she hears the front door, whatever, I don't think I hear a noise. But if she hears a noise, I'll go check it just so she feels safe in the moment. But by not looking at New York crime news, it just keeps her sane. And that's a small version of what I'm talking about in a bigger way. I don't look at the algorithm very often, and it keeps me sane.
Yeah, I guess you just shouldn't plague yourself with all these horrific news. Because honestly, if you're going to look at one, you're just going to keep looking through about, like, a rabbit hole. I mean, that's the word I'm looking for. If you look through one piece of crime-related news, you're likely to go through a rabbit hole. It's like that YouTube algorithm where I'm getting off topic here. This YouTube series.
Wait. Slow down. What is the topic right now?
You know what? That's a great question. I think at the end of the day, what we're talking about is how today's media is creating a destructive space and affecting society to unconventional means.
Wow. Look at that. You took a stream of consciousness rant. You took a segment that had no purpose, no logic to it, that was just rambling, and just like that, you gave it meaning. You gave it a topic. You summarized it. You're doing a great job here, Zach.
And this is why I am the intern, Zach Zhang.
You are the intern.
Mm-hmm.
Today's media, getting you down. Did you watch the debate?
I only watched clips of it, and it is very funny to watch two old men just ranting to each other about some problems. Because it wasn't much of a debate, but it felt more of a rant from what I've heard. One of the lines I heard was, "My son was not a loser. He was not a sucker," when Trump was like dissing his son or something, or Biden's son. I don't really understand the full context of that clip. I just took it for what it is at face value, and I thought it was very funny.
Well, the president's son, Biden's son, has hit some legal trouble, Hunter Biden. And
I'm aware of that.
And the right wing, every conspiracy theory that they have comes down to Hunter Biden and some sort of laptop, which makes no sense. Haven't they heard of the internet? Like, things are stored in the cloud now. It's like they think it's all on a laptop, you know? But yeah, it's just a bunch of old men fighting like teenagers who should know better.
Yeah, like I don't think they're making any great points. They're just bringing in statistics and like opinions, I guess, that kind of levy their position against the other, but not for any substantial value. It's not like going to help the Americans anyway. It's going to help them get the position. That's about it. I don't know. It's just very appalling seeing someone, you know, both individuals who may be approaching dementia age, just duking it out.
It is kind of fun, if not horrifying.
It's kind of fun. It is definitely horrifying. From a Canadian perspective, it is very fun. But I can imagine as an American, you're like, oh, man. Oh, man.
I'm not American, Zach. I don't know why you think I'm not American.
That's true, but I'm not specifically referring to you. I'm referring to Americans in general.
Good. All right, how today's media is creating a negative climate. That is our topic, as stated by Zhang. Zach, thank you for your time. This was a good chat.
Thanks, David. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
That is our show. Thank you for listening. I'll be back tomorrow, then out until next Wednesday. I don't know what to say other than see you tomorrow, and then again on next Wednesday.